Said your truth in text. So I know some.
You have a full house. I love that.
Like it. Did you go to the max? 80% of Africa. So I was looking at ours and I was looking at what everybody was capped out at. You guys are capped out pretty, like for a pretty significant increase. I thought, but maybe I could be wrong.
We had
You good to go? Yes. Okay. Okay,
Property values, yeah.
do this. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:31 PM on Thursday, December 12th, and I call to order Immediate District 287 School Board. As always, we are going to begin with the reading of our mission statement this evening to ground our work together in the discussion is to be the premier provider of innovative. Each member districts can meet the unique learning needs of its students. With that, we will move to the agenda. There were no changes from the agenda that was publicly posted and set out in advance. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So
Marty, all in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? The chair votes aye. And the agenda is approved. The thing that I skipped right. Introductions. Which is just an opportunity to introduce ourselves. Person tonight. Thank you. Able to be with us tonight is our remaining board member, forum for community comments. If any members of our community wished for time to speak with the board, and I don't think we had any requests for this evening. So thank you. So moving on to containing routine business items that we approve as a slate, unless there is an item that a board, I did not hear about anything in advance. I don't see anyone about to request to do so. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
so moved. Second.
We have a motion by Kim Ross and a second by Ruthie Dallas. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. So now we are at the share the success and recognitions portion of our meeting. Always our favorite student spotlight from Northern Star Online, and I'm going to invite a brief statement about our student.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'm not sure it's on. All right. Well, unfortunately, our student was not able to be here tonight. But the student is a student that worked at the West Education Center to graduate from high school. And so we do have a message from the mom, and so I will read it as the parent. It says, "My son's journey to completing high school was far from easy. After dropping out, he struggled to find his way, and I worried about his future. That's when we discovered NSO Online School, and it truly changed his life. The flexibility of the program allowed him to work at his own pace while balancing other responsibilities. The teachers were incredibly supportive, providing one-on-one guidance and encouragement. With their help, he not only caught up, but exceeded our expectations. Chance he needed to finish what you've started. We highly recommend NSO. Melissa Schrader. And so Jackson Schrader was a student at West Education Center who worked through courses there and then and was no longer able to attend full-time at the school. And so he was able to then take courses with NSO to finish up the remainder of his credits, which were, I think, 5 or 6 semester credits. And so it's nice that we were able to help him to get there.
And who's with you?
This is Ariel Chung, our new assistant principal in NSO.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for
So-
being here. What a wonderful way to hear about the work of NSO, right? Like such a wonderful series of remarks from Jackson's mom. So thank you so much for
Yes.
sharing. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you so
All right.
much and
Thank you.
welcome to 287.
Yeah.
So next for the second month in a row, I'm going to welcome Amanda Klutman up for our Above and Beyond winner.
Thank you, Madam Brackey and Darcy and board members and NSO. I'm glad you're here to celebrate with us. Tonight we are here to recognize William Carlisle, known as Chef Will by his students and colleagues. He is our exceptional culinary arts instructor at the Career and Technical Center. Chef Will's innovative teaching approach has transformed culinary education into a powerful platform excellence, demonstrating that culinary instruction can be far more than technical skills development. His program in Cooking for Independent Living and Culinary Arts have become transformative experiences that empower students, celebrate diversity, and build critical life skills. This past year, Chef Will has exemplified our strategic priorities through developing thoughtful experiences for our students. He's done this through several different activities. I'm just going to name a few. Over the summer, he provided a community service project where students were able to cook and prepare a meal for local residents in need. They were able to go there and deliver the food. He had over 100 curriculum that explores global cuisines, fostering cultural understanding and appreciation. He also designs inclusive learning environment. Heard and valued. He cultivates personal, which leads to industry. There is not just thank you. It's amazing. Do you want to come up and say even your chef?
Yeah, no, what an amazing opportunity. I don't need to be recognized for anything. I'm gonna do it regardless. You know what I mean? I love what I do. I was told if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Well, I'll tell you, last year was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. It was the first time being a teacher. I appreciate the challenge, right? And to be in people's lives, things like that. I'll be honest, I know this is about me and to be recognized by me. I've been with this district for 8 years in April. And I'll be honest, since Mrs. Dowd has been at this district, I have felt such a presence from not only the upper league. He didn't just pop in and say, to see but he's staying there for at least 20, 30 minutes, laughing and participating. And then the leadership will leave emails. I mean, Amanda, Scott, Julie, Danny over at the Career Tech Center. I mean, they're leaving emails and saying, the things I see you doing in there are good. Keep doing that. You know what I mean? Instead of coming with a clipboard and saying, here's what I see you doing wrong. Stop doing that. You know what I mean? It's really an encouragement for everyone at our buildings to have their presence there. And I'm gonna try not to get emotional. But I know this ain't a big deal for most educators. It's not a big deal to get $500 straight class. But my sons are here. And this could be a catalyst for my young men to see their dad. And maybe their lives could be transformed by this. So I just thank you from my family. I speak on behalf of the past, present, and future of my family. I thank you for honoring one of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when Chef Will says that he's been here for 8 years, he worked in our schools as a cook. So,
Oh,
and
cool.
his connection with students and his passion for teaching was it was apparent to everyone. And so last year was his first year as a CTE Pathways teacher, and you knocked it out of the park,
Mhm.
and you're continuing to knock it out of the park. And so as we grow as a community, I'm just really grateful that you're part of it. Yeah. Any other questions or
You said
comments?
wonderful,
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's hard to add to what both of you and you too, Amanda, have said, but especially thank you for doing what you do and bringing your sons with you here tonight. We're honored to have all of you here because this is why we're here, is to support you and the things that you do every day.
And please recognize that, making your energy and what you bring to each student, right? Is an example, not just for your own children, but to all the children that you get to encounter. Even though you've only been a teacher for a very short period of time, the impact that has is a lifetime. That's priceless. So thank you for being that type of person who's willing to take that on and then to want to love doing that. The education profession is a fairly unique place. It's not for everybody. So for someone who then naturally comes to that and then excels at that, I mean, that's priceless. So thank you.
Chair, one of my favorite things to do is above and beyond and surprising everyone. I do have to share, this was a unique surprise because in the lab at CTC, there's a walk-in freezer. We can access that freezer from another classroom. There was probably 15 of us while he was teaching, came out of the freezer. Completely surprised him, and so that was really cool. You're terrified.
Well, let's do one more round for that. Thank you. All right. With that, we're going to move on to the superintendent's report. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Dowd to start off a conversation and approve requested action around calendars.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been here. We have started a calendar committee, and so this is year 3 of the calendar committee. And this year, we wanted to develop a 2-year calendar. And so we were hoping to do it last school year, but we need to be in cycle with our member districts. So in the calendar committee, we have representation from the unaffiliated staff, the administration staff, our association of principals and assistant principals, local 284 and local 220. And we all come together, we look at an agreement. I would love to say we could review, but you all have to match a calendar first. And so what you all have patterns in your calendar, like most school districts. We look at professional development days. And so what you'll see before you are two calendars, one for the 2025-26 school year and one for the 26-27 school year. The student contact days are 172. In the 25-26, the first day of school will be September 2nd, with ending with students on June 4th. Staff would have that last day on the 5th. Uniquely in the 26-27 calendar, and part of the law that we can't start before Labor Day, and Labor Day is very late. So the first day would be September 8th. And the last day would be June 10th, first week. Some of the things that we talk about is winter break. And there are some chances, like weeks of winter break, and sometimes I think our students would like that, but when it comes June, they should June. So you have to compromise sometimes. We also are, well, as the group talked about the 26-27 calendar, if there are any legislative changes regarding the starting before Labor Day, we would bring that back to our staff and our calendar committee for consideration, would be the only clause. Or if there are any legislative mandates that we need to acknowledge in regards to days off or identified holidays, we would do that, bring it back to the calendar. So tonight I'm seeking approval. Both calendars have been vetted by all of our unions, our associations, and are here for recommendation from the calendar committee. So I'm seeking approval of the 2025-26 calendar and then the 26-27 calendar.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments about the calendars, process, other? Jenna?
Dr. Becky. Thank you for providing this and all the work that goes into it, especially considering all of our calendars, which I'm sure are as different as the districts are. So I appreciate that. I think that one of the things that we've been very sensitive to in Hopkins is making sure that we're giving all families time in which to practice their cultural heritage. And just wondering what kind of consideration is put into that during this process.
Yeah, so we have a lot of conversations. Thank you for that question. We had a lot of conversations around I'll go within the calendar. And so we agreed as a calendar committee to be mindful, but not favor one religious holiday over another, and really separating school and state. However, we talked about ways that we could support is one, identifying the equity department, identifying religious holidays and accommodations so that students are not negatively penalized for expressing the religious holiday in our space during the day. So that would be prayer or unable to eat. What accommodations would we do so that there's a still sense of inclusion? The other thing that we talked about is on religious holidays that we would not have evening meetings for families to do that. So those are the two ways in which we are supporting it, not necessarily equally within the days off, but in other ways.
Right. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions?
I was just curious about the Juneteenth day. How do you deal with that?
Yep.
Those for summer employees, right?
Yeah, exactly. So 11-month or certain contracts have Juneteenth as part of their holidays. It's a federal holiday, so we acknowledge it. The district always had identified holidays, and then they had 3 float holidays. And so when Juneteenth was required as a holiday, we set that, and then it has 2 float holidays that we put in the contract. So we always put space for that holiday, and now it's set as Juneteenth. And for 10-month employees, it may not impact, but for other employees, it may. So we just adjust their contract. And so, if it is part of their contract, they may get a float holiday around winter break. To adjust, and so we do individual based on who it impacts in their contract. We do individual agreements on those days off.
Okay, thank you.
Or questions. So with that, we could entertain a motion to approve the proposed calendars as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Shannon Andreessen and a second by Mike Rumacall. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the calendars are approved, and please share our gratitude with the calendar committee.
I will. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Back to you.
All right, so this plan, and I'm gonna ask Camille and Rachel, our communication, and talk about District 287's logo and probably a refresh to that as we live our strategic plan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Superintendent Dowd, and thank you all board members. We're really excited to show you some of the redesigned options for our logo. So I'm going to turn it over to my amazing, talented, and very gifted colleague, Rachel Prost, who designed all of these and she'll tell you the whole process she went through, incorporating some engagement that we did.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Dowd, esteemed board members, and my fellow colleagues. My name's Rachel, as Camille mentioned, and I'm really excited to be here tonight to present our logos or new logo options for the district. So before I go into the new stuff, I thought it'd be fun to take This is one that I found from like 2005 to 2010. And this is the shoe that we're pretty familiar with, that we've seen around the building. We're still using it on some of our social media and our website. And slowly we are stepping away from it, as I started about July of last year. So this is the logo, just the words that I've been using for the past year and a half. And so as you can see, a lot of our other sites and programs have logos. And the district is kind of just some words. So we have decided that we are going to do a little bit of a brand refresh. Need it refreshed to really better represent our vibrant and diverse community that we serve. So this is really an exciting update, and it's going to not only better reflect our students and our families and caregivers and our staff, but also reflect our district's mission and values and beliefs. So our brand refresh journey, the new website in May of 2024 this year, and we are going to continue our little brand refresh with the introduction of a new logo for the 2025-2026 school year. So tonight I'm going to present you with a few different logo options to strengthen the district's identity and really create that unified and recognizable brand. I'm also going to talk about the little key considerations that went into how we got to the designs. We're going to look at the design process. I'm going to show you the 3 different options. We'll talk about next steps after tonight, and then do good with you. So goals. So again, we are creating a cohesive identity that really represents our students and our families and caregivers and our staff at 287. And we also want our image to reflect those mission, values, and beliefs. And we also want to make sure that our logo is suitable across multiple platforms. So we basically print the logo on lots of letterhead and business cards, on flyers. We also want to make sure that we can use the logo on digital platforms like our social media, our website. When we're trying to hire new staff in, we want them to be able to recognize our brand. And we also have apparel. We have a store, so we want to make sure that we can use our logo in multiple different ways. So we're going to go into our design concession for all of our proposed logos tonight came from when we asked our families and caregivers and staff during the strategic planning engagement what they thought the district would look like in 2029, we asked them to write down some words or phrases, and these were the ones that stuck out, particularly connected, journey, and beauty and bloom. So those are a lot of the words that inspired where our logo comes from, or our new proposed logos will come from tonight. And we also want to prioritize designs that are really recognizable and will withstand time. So here's a little bit of the process. I'm going to flip my page. And so again, I drew inspiration from that word cloud to help design the initial concepts. And since then, we've been going through this iterative design process. So that means I'm coming up with ideas. You can kind of see some faded ones that were options and ultimately were not selected. And that's really showing that the first design that you make is not going to be the ultimate design that you have in the end. And so we're talking to like our strategic implementation team, our instructional and operational leaders, our executive leaders, and getting feedback and building off of the different logos. So ultimately, we will be bringing 2 concepts to our students and staff and families and caregivers to vote early next year. And so that then what our family. So we're on to the fun logo portion. Something that you'll notice, this is the one that we're familiar with. It's a little bit longer. And all of the designs I'm proposing to kind of reorganize the text to stack it so it's not so long and horizontal. It'll also be able to use it better across multiple platforms, whether that's digital or printed. And now I've got 3 concepts. So here's our first one. I basically have a design that has both the tagline underneath and then one without the tagline. So here's our first one. It's really trying to convey growth and hope and resilience. We've got this little like sun icon to really show that like radiating lines of the rising and setting sun. Basically each day brings new challenges and new opportunities, and how District 287 is really dedicated to preparing our students for a bright future. We also have our little blue plant human figure that's in the middle to really represent a student that's being embraced by these leaves that are below, suggesting like growth and support in the nurturing environment that 287 creates. And again, with the green leaves, we're bringing in a new color. It's really to represent that like support system and the potential for growth that students have at District 287. So our overall message and metaphor can be seen as resilience and hope, and representing 287's committing those challenging times. And it also aligns with our mission to support students and prepare them for our rather complex world that we live in. So these last 2 slides, and as I'm going to do for each example, we'll kind of show the logo in context with its website and how it could look on like the business cards. So we got another concept. Here's concept B. And this one is a little different. We're symbolizing teamwork and unity. And again, the district's really supportive environment. So we have lots of other colors. The multiple colors highlight like diversity and inclusivity and the range of the individual paths that everyone, not only our students, but also our staff, can take in the district. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the star shape. Stars and symbols on their own don't always necessarily have a certain context with them until you add a meaning to it. And so like the 5-pointed star throughout history has had many different contexts. It's used on about like 35 different country flags. It's on like military, police, fire badges or paramedic badges and currency. And so this star that we have here is really trying to excellence and achievement 287's mission to help students shine in their own way. We also have a little interconnected design. It's kind of like people or a team leaning on each other, and it really conveys that strong sense of unity and collaboration. And because the stars kind of point all in different directions, it's symbolizing the District 287's support for individual journeys and diverse paths. So this overall message with this logo is really to encapsulate the district's role in fostering a unified and supportive environment where students and individuals are encouraged to grow and explore various different directions. And then the star, with its interconnected design, really celebrates unity and teamwork and really the pursuit of academic achievement. I have one more concept. There's concept C. Again, another kind of metaphorical organic design to symbolize growth and individuality and the nurturing role that District 287 plays. So we have this like student as a plant situation, symbolizing like students are nurtured, they're supported to bloom into their potential, and then leaves kind of represent, again, more growth and journey that each student takes. We have this blue kind of winding path situation that emphasize the district's role in helping students really navigate their own individual journeys. And we have again, more green leaves, but it really communicates beauty and blossoming and fulfillment, suggesting that like students' journey, no matter how unique they are still valued and encouraged. So we have our overall message here with this one, which is again, like providing that environment where students can grow and explore and ultimately bloom in their own ways. And even though everyone has diverse experiences and paths, it really allows our staff and students to work together to walk along and achieve that continuous support. So with all the concepts, our next steps is really to, after the input that we get today, we're going to finalize the design, and in a February-ish, our students and staff and caregivers will vote and figure out which logo they like the best. We're actually working with our curriculum and instruction managers to create a little mini lesson plan to teach students about the iterative design process. So it's not just like, hey, pick one. It's like, how do we get here? Why do we have a logo? Why is that important? And then in March, we're going to review the results and then recommend a logo. So I'll bring it back here and be like, hey, our families and caregivers and staff are like, we like this one. What do you think? And after we have a board approving whichever logo, we'll implement that in about July for the 2025-2026 school year. And it will take about another year to fully launch the new brand guide. So now here are all three of them together. And I'm going to turn it back to you for feedback. And maybe if you have a few favorites that you wanted to mention, I'm ready for questions and comments.
Rachel, thank you. That was
Thank you.
amazing. You did such a beautiful job in a very short amount of time, like covering some history and why this matters, and then laying out these three really remarkable options that you've come up with. So thank you so much. So you're asking questions, comments, but you also want to hear from
Yeah, like if
people?
you have favorites, if there's one that's like really speaking to you.
Great. Kim.
So I've been in marketing for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so kudos to you for taking on a rebrand.
Thanks.
It's a
It's a thing.
thing.
Awesome.
Thing. I will
Yeah.
not ascribe any adjectives to what kind of a thing it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, my reaction to it is, for some reason, C reminds me of Avatar. I don't know.
Like in a
why.
good way or a
It
bad
just-
way?
No, in a good, it reminds me way, not
Yeah.
good, bad, or
Yeah.
otherwise, just kind of
Right.
had that feel. I mean, I do think it tends to evoke a more feminine thought or a
Sure.
feminine image to it. That's just me.
Yeah.
I like it. I think the person in the middle could get lost somehow. And B, I love, because
Right.
when I looked at that, what went through my head was joyous community.
Mm,
And
joyous
then when
community.
you further described the 5-pointed star and excellence and
Mhm.
so forth.
Yeah.
Home run.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
That's just my opinion.
Appreciate it.
I like B as well. It sort of depicts to me joy and connectedness. And just a multitude of different ideas or paths that you want to go.
Mhm.
And I really think that connectedness stands out a lot.
Thank you, Ruthie. Yeah, we have a lot of people who really like leaning on each other and not like so,
Dancing.
yeah. Anyone else?
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people are probably just trying to be polite.
That's all good.
Renee, go ahead. And then Shannon.
I also am very drawn to B.
Mm.
The item A reminds me more of an agricultural logo,
Mm,
which is also a good feeling.
Mhm.
But I think one of those can speak for everything in the world is me.
Yeah. Thanks, Renee.
It's nice. Thank you.
Hey, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you for all of this work. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And I like how consistent you are with the colors in all of them. Like, we're not making that choice. Like, this is just a very clear, like, stylistic
Mhm.
language that you're asking us to contemplate. So thank you for that. I too appreciate B, but my initial thought was I've seen this logo before.
Mhm.
So I don't know where.
Sure.
So I wonder if that other people might have that reaction to it. Is it distinctive enough? But great work. They're
you.
all compelling. I want to keep looking at them.
That's good.
Yes, but these, they're compelling. You want to
Yeah.
be like, oh, what's that? What's going on there? So
Thanks, Shannon.
terrific job.
Yeah, there's something about like, is it too familiar, or maybe we can do a image search and we can find other like star
Yeah,
logos, because we
exactly.
definitely don't want to get confused with
Yeah.
other things, especially if like the other things are not in the same industry or they might be like controversial to what we're doing. So we can definitely
Right.
do some more research.
I think if we're thinking about the same thing, it's the hammer. The hammer mental health
Oh.
Maybe.
logo person, right? The person that's
Oh.
off to, because I think I had the
Could
same
be.
feeling.
All right.
It
Maybe
feels
they-
like a healthcare thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that might be
Sure.
it.
I was thinking more theatrical.
Are you Googling it?
Marcy's on it for us.
Horror is what came up.
All right.
Dan, what were you gonna share?
Oh, just much to say. My impartial to be. I like all the work you put into this. It's clearly a lot of effort, and you
Thanks.
worked well with the team, and we're proud of what you come up with. But yeah, I mean, just kind of avoiding any kind of similarities or anything like that is going to be important. I'm not saying you have done. I think all of them really do stand out, and I think B certainly looks the most modern, the most aesthetically pleasing to the eye and whatnot. So
Gotcha.
well done. We look forward to your final product.
Thanks, Dan.
So I'll play devil's advocate.
Sure.
B, to me, reminds me of a dance group. I get the interconnected part, but the complete opposite of A brought out growth.
Mhm.
When I think about what our primary mission is in terms of, meeting the unique learning needs of someone and helping them rise to their potential, whatever it is, I actually thought the concept of A spoke more to me about what the mission of the district is versus the logo concept that I think B represents. C, I think I didn't care for it at all,
Mhm.
actually. A and B are totally two different concepts. And I think they're both valid. I think that I love the color scheme in B more as
Sure.
it's used than it is in A. So like that sort of purplish component. I don't know, it's not being drawn so much out of the sun component, but I like that color scheme.
Mhm.
I think that the growth aspect of A really speaks more to what I think the mission of the district is.
Mhm.
And even though, yes, someone mentioned agriculture, I'm thinking, to me, there's still that growth element to that. From that standpoint.
Sure. Thank you.
I don't have a lot of words. I had an emotion and I had
Okay.
a very emotional response to A.
Mhm.
I really did. And it was a strong, good response.
Good.
Thank you for your work. It's
Thank you.
outstanding.
Yeah, I think something to mention, like B, I did use a different kind of technique. Like there's a little bit more gradients happening. So that could be a reflection of like why it feels a little bit more modern right now. Using gradients is kind of everywhere. So it is possible that if we like kind of the vibe of B, if we added gradients to the greens and the oranges, similar to what I did in B to A, that could have a little bit of a different look to it.
Well, and I think the gradients would translate to a grayscale version of it.
Mhm.
So you don't have to go straight black and white.
Right.
Or white on a dark background. You could still keep some dimension to it.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because currently as our website exists, it's a one color. It's just all white on a blue. So we wouldn't get the multiple colors
Yeah.
as we see now on our website, but that doesn't mean that we can't change the way our website looks if we like the colors that are there.
I just had one more comment. Since what Karen just said, now it kind of makes me, why did I feel the way that I did, especially about B? B is more invokes the image of the teamwork of the staff. Seems like it's a bringing us together, the connectiveness that supported component of what the staff is, as opposed to the interactive with the
Mhm.
student.
Gotcha.
I think that's kind of, so when you said that emotional thing, that's what spoke to me after you said that. So again,
Sure.
I'm not, if you did B, I'd be totally fine with that.
Mhm.
But I think that's, as you're talking and you're getting the feedback from all the different parties, it'd be interesting to see that feeling and that emotive component. What people say around that, it'd be really interesting to see when the recommendation
Right.
comes back.
Especially when we're like, we are in education, we are here for students. So if you're thinking staff are really important too. So it's like, we are here for students. I suppose you could picture anything you wanted to be an A, but if we're like, that is a student, they are at the center of what we do, that is a good argument for A.
It'll be really interesting to see what comes from and I love that you're doing mini lessons around it.
Yeah.
I think that's so smart.
Yeah.
Jackie.
So I had completely different that it's the staff. I am a classroom teacher,
Mhm.
and in my class, it is a community,
Mhm.
and we build that community, and we do lean on each other,
Mhm.
including the times when I have to use my cane and my students are helping me out.
Mhm.
I mean, that was, and I just think that learn differently than the typical student. This just really speaks to me with that variance of colors and all the different directions, but still being a one cohesive unit. It just, like, I would like that on my clothing for my classroom.
Thanks, Jackie. Anyone else?
You know,
Hey.
one other thing about A,
Mhm.
the rays of the sun, if you will.
Yeah.
It feels a little busy, like
Okay.
there might be too many elements
Sure.
there. And maybe that's part of it. It's like, it's
Mhm.
sort of competing for your eye as opposed to feeling like a cohesive image.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. It's busy. I mean, we have a lot of things going this way.
Yeah.
Which is great, but yeah, you're right. It is a little busy.
Yeah.
You can always eliminate
Yeah.
that.
Things from people we haven't heard from, and it's okay if you don't want to share, but just want to make sure there's room for everybody. Okay, yes, you
Go
did.
first.
I'm not sharing my opinion.
Okay, that's
I just want to
smart.
appreciate the Rachel and Camille and the team, this has been a heavy lift.
Yeah.
And a lot of feedback from a lot of places. So I've seen the original to where we are today, and
Mhm.
I love how that you take feedback for your talents and the hard work around this, and looking forward to the final.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcy.
Yeah, I was gonna say as well, I feel like they're all really strong options that have a unique point of view.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that a lot. And like I just said, I'm really excited to hear what comes from students and then other groups within our community. Because I think ultimately, like, that's what will
Right.
mean the most to me. I had like different reactions to all three. I think I'm most drawn to A or C for reasons related to growth. And I really like how C looks on the samples that you provided,
Sure.
which was
Yeah.
interesting to me because I actually liked A first
Mhm.
on its own, but then in the context of other printed materials or the website, I thought C was really striking and unlike anything I'd seen
Mhm.
before. Whereas I feel like I had the similar reaction with B where it felt like I've seen this in another way, or it feels more similar to
Mhm.
other logos I've seen, but I also really appreciate the comments people have shared about what makes it really powerful,
Yeah.
given the work that we do. So I am excited about all of them, honestly, in different ways, and just
Mhm.
appreciate that you brought them to us for us to be able to have the conversation at this point in the process too.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. We'll see we're sending them to vote February-ish, so we're curious to see what people think. Be good.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank
Really
you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we are now moving into our instructional report. I'm so excited for our next agenda item, which is an update on the therapeutic teaching model. So S from Wilder, please come on up.
Hello, Madam Chair,
Hello.
Becky, and Superintendent Dowd and board members. Give an update on the therapeutic teaching model program. Some of you may be familiar with the program. Some of you, we tried to weave in a little bit of history for those that may not know a lot about what the program is. So what we'll do is provide a brief history of the development and changes, learn a little bit about Wilder and the services that they offer within this program model, understand how the program is funded, and then share success within the program. And if I didn't say, Alma Marquez is from Wilder Foundation, and she'll be sharing more about some of the parts of the process and the work that's actually done on a day in and day out basis. So just to give an overview, this program, and I was kind of like, as we were working on the presentation, I was like, it's been 10 years. How old am I? 10 years. This, yes, I'm like, I don't want to think about it, but I was like, it's 2024, Tanya. So this program actually started in 2014. And at the time in 2014, going back in time, this was something that our former superintendent, Sandy Lewandowski, had a lot of issues within our elementary program, which back then in District 287, elementary programming was all at North Education Center. And there were a lot of referrals, a lot of high numbers, a lot of needs within the student population, and concerns that many of these students were not being allowed into traditional day treatment programming because their behaviors were so significant. So what started was a conversation and looking at partners, and Wilder quickly became one of the partners that rose to the top for us in terms of what their work has been. And they're on the other side of the river, but it was a really good fit. We started having conversations, and at that time, Alma was actually involved, along with Dr. Benita Amadi, who couldn't be here, with coming in and looking at what our structures of our programs look like and doing a really thorough needs analysis and talking about what they saw, what some of the challenges were, and what they proposed we could do to address some of those challenges. And that was the development of this model. And I'm going to talk about it more. It was not as easy as just doing a needs assessment and then you have money, because we knew that we would have to have some additional money. Fortunately, the legislature went through at that time a process of creating an innovative mental health grant program that was opened up to the intermediate programs to allow us to start such a program. There were a lot of meetings. So to get us to where we were, we actually went once the summer before everything got started, we had a lot of meetings, we had a lot of conversations, a lot of things were done outside of to get us where we were, because we're taking two organizations, two philosophies, two ways of doing and working to merge them together. And so initially, we really had to focus on kindergarten through third grade programming. We took a chance on middle school for a year. It wasn't really what the true model began with. So we went back to really that focus on kindergarten through third grade. It was once only at North Education Center, and then it went over to South Education Center. So where we currently stand is 2 classrooms at North Education Center, 2 classrooms at South Education Center. And so we did get renewed funding recently in the legislature again that will take us through 2027 at this time. And so that's kind of where our program has gone over time in getting us to where we are today. So I'll turn it over to Alma to talk really about the program model.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Superintendent Dowd, and board members. I could talk about this program for a very long time, so I gave myself notes so I would try and be succinct for you guys. Our program delivers classroom therapy, individual therapy, and family therapy with 2 different humans. So each classroom has 1 classroom therapist that stays in the room with the milieu, with the teacher, the duration of the day. Individual therapy is something like traditional school-based mental health offers, where you can do a pull-out, and our family therapy actually needs to be quite flexible. Not every family is ready to receive family therapy in the same way. Evening hours are preferred, virtual sessions sometimes necessary. Sometimes a kid's going between two homes and mom wants a session and dad wants a session and they don't want to be together. So our family therapists have to be quite flexible. So for us to combine that with our individual therapy, where we could potentially reschedule an individual session for a different day and time, works for us. So the classroom therapy is where kids get repetition. Little brains, little kids, we don't learn something by doing it once, over and over again. And what we're targeting is regulation. And so co-regulation needs to happen with repetition. We need to go up the arousal curve and back down together. Classroom therapy is targeting that specifically. Oftentimes there seems to be not enough of it to go around to the 6 kids in the room, but it's better than it was without it. And then we combine those 3 services with a specific like super goal target that we work on. In individual therapy, kids are doing a lot of the time play therapy because they're young. They don't have a lot of vocabulary for what their inner experience is, but they can show us. And so when we know what's most important to them through that kind of an experience, we're also in the home to see what's happening there. And then we're seeing what's happening in the classroom. And when those 3 things connect, we're moving in a way that's faster with any of those 3 things separate. And to have those professionals be on the same page, be in the same hallway and collaborating with each other with repetition, often unbillably, that helps a lot. The foundation at the bottom is reflective supervision and professional development. Reflective supervision is like fancy words for saying that everyone in the classroom team, teachers, education support professionals, therapists, and myself, a supervisor, we meet weekly to be on the same page about these kids because stuff happens quickly. New things are said almost every day by these kids that if we're not talking to one another, we can miss it. And sometimes these things are really significant, but just the height of everything that's happening and the amount of like alarm bells that ring throughout a day when kids are dysregulated, we can miss some really important pieces of information from kids. And so reflective supervision has us focus on ourselves. No one can co-regulate with an adult that's not regulated. So if we can take care of the adults in the room together, some of our staff on our SEC TTM team call reflective supervision group therapy, like it's their therapy. And you can use it in whatever way is most helpful to you, but the therapists are there, we're present. The supervisors are there to support everyone. We mediate conflicts. We mediate our different parenting styles that show up with one another. We have to hash out quite a few things on our team's health and dynamics to make sure that we're being our best selves for kids. And it's a place where no one's boss is there, where you can openly say, I'm so irritated by this kid or this one behavior, and everyone can say, okay, then we got you. Then you shouldn't be the one in that moment. And then how do we support each other and spread who can be? So it's a nice space, and we are able to use some of our funding to be able to pay for the little bits of time of our ESPs that wouldn't be able to be in contract for that time. Professional development's tricky this year, largely with to do some mandated things around literacy and other goals. But what we do is carve out some time in August to get on the same page with whoever our new staff, and because teams change every year too, and different ESPs come and go and are needed in different places in the building. But we like to start with some foundational understanding of what is regulation, which largely leans on what is attachment and what is child development. And then how does trauma get in the mix and mess kind of everything about that up. And we talk about regulation and the arousal curve. We usually talk about communication styles and personality styles and how to manage conflict in teams, stuff that we know helps our school year when we can start it with no kids present, with no stress present. We also have been bringing people to an escape room. And I swear to you, I sit and watch the dynamics in the escape rooms of all 4 teams. What plays out in the escape room plays out in the school year. And if we can start talking about it then, like the teacher stepping in and doing everything, and the ESP is saying, but I want to, but you don't step back. It happened in the escape room and it's happening in the school year. So things like that are the way we kind of bridge experiential professional development too, so we can kind of have fun, take care of each other. It's such hard work, and then just kind of keep it moving. It also didn't go on script. So.
That's okay. There you go.
One thing I did want to mention is that Tanya mentioned the innovation grant that kicked off TTM starting. 3 different projects kicked off with that grant, TTM being one of them. The other projects, I've gotten to know them a little bit, they don't focus on family therapy. There's individual and there's classroom components present, but not family. And we emphasize that. Haven't met a child yet whose family isn't on fire with the same things that set fire to the classroom. And we got a little bit of money from the Wilder Foundation, and Wilder Research had some whole family dollars because there's a whole family initiative at Wilder. You don't need to know about that. We got some money to be able to ask the question, what I'd like you to see is that the kids who made good progress, it did correlate with the families receiving the highest amount of family services. So it's not going anywhere. Our need to prioritize family in the delivery of these services. Here are some of the details of the services being provided. We train our individual and family therapists in evidence-based practices, same as classroom therapists. We've actually had some individual and family therapists transfer to classroom, and classroom therapists transfer to individual and family because they like diversity in the work, and the same models apply. Also, when you become a new parent, sometimes you don't want to be telling hours don't seem as doable, things like that. But the evidence-based practices that we lean on the most in our model is experiential play therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, otherwise known as EMDR, brain spotting, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, child-parent psychotherapy, CPP, and then for milieu, attachment regulation and competency, Margaret Blaustein's work, and Washburn's developmental repair work. And none of those things have we been able to use per the protocol. We have to make a lot of adaptations to meet kids and families where they're at and to respond to the way that we're trying to blend ourselves into education and not run a therapy program, but we want kids to get their educational needs met and be able to regulate through them. So those things are a little different. We also, again, prioritize family therapy house, which started largely in COVID, but it's working. We stress in person, in home as much as we can. But we can also have sessions at school where the family and sometimes siblings come to school for the sessions. And then we have therapists that are going in community. So they'll meet a mom on their lunch hour and they'll walk laps around mom's work building. Just so that the connection stays and the continuity between everyone's view of the child and strategies around working towards wellness kind of link together. Oftentimes we have to become case managers because families who face a lot of barriers to services can't often hang with all these other providers in their lives, and case managers are quick to close and often hard to get a hold of lately. And then we offer summer groups, which is again meeting a family need. But for families that don't qualify for ESY, or for families who the kid just got kicked out of the Y and there's nothing, or the skills worker left, all the plans that they had for good care for the summer fall apart, we step in and our classroom therapists create activities and bring kids to playgrounds in the community for activities through the summer.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure you're wondering, like, how do we pay for this? As we mentioned earlier, 2017, and they supported the intermediate districts and then one of the cooperative school 19 school year, and then we've had some additional funding as well. But a lot of the funding has really been in partnership because Wilder has done a good share of funding for support. One of the biggest challenges, I would say, of the program is that even though there's elements that mirror a day treatment model, we have had countless conversations. I really literally couldn't tell you how many conversations with DHS. This falls in a gap between the work of DHS and the work of MDE in terms of what's written in language around a program like this. So that is one of the biggest challenges of this program, because I could imagine one of the questions being, why don't you have more of these classrooms, right? That's one of the challenges. Where we are now in terms of current funding, as I mentioned earlier, is that we will have this funding that'll go through the 2027 school year. We have to reapply, even though it's been awarded per the legislature, we do still have to go through an application process. And so that's been a challenge as well, because if the state doesn't have their paperwork ready to go and we don't have an official grant notification, that you can imagine some of the challenges that poses in terms of doing what we intend to do on both sides, with it just as well as with Wilder. So Wilder, the work that we've been doing, they are the fiscal host, because our district is not the way that it was written. You need to be a children's therapeutic supports provider or CTSS certified, and we're not. And so Wilder is our fiscal host for that funding as a result of that as well. And it's just been a good partnership in making sure that we're able to support the needs of our students and our families. So I'm going to let Alma share about reintegration.
Okay, we thought we would do some success story talking at this point. And this is just to show you how many kids have made a successful transition from TTM back to their home schools. When we came to the table talking about doing this program, kids weren't leaving. It just wasn't happening, and definitely not if they came in kindergarten, not by third grade. So since the start of TTM, we also had COVID, which took us on a very creative path. Our kids for longer too, and didn't get new kids because we didn't believe they actually got the full service. So 12 kids transitioned while they were in the full TTM program. So while they were in one of those 4 classrooms, 5 transitioned after that our therapeutic classroom environment isn't a true test for readiness for transition because of the extra adult support. So they'd like to see a kid outside of a TTM classroom for a year. So some of these kids, some of those 5, were potentially ready in classroom, but they wanted to see readiness outside of classroom. Now what we build in is, with knowing that, is rotating our kids so that for a math lesson, for a reading lesson, can we send them to a different room where none of their familiar staff are, where the classroom therapist isn't? Can we test it in that way and tell member districts that we actually believe this is in the child and not just in the environment? And things like that have been helpful. And that's why we have now 8 kids that are currently in our rooms that are in transitions. In the map, you can see them broken down by the different referring member districts. How am I doing on time? Okay. I was going to highlight a story, and I couldn't make up a good name, so I'm just going to say student. We got a referral of a 7-year-old in 2019, and at the intake meeting, Robbinsdale told us that this child was only able to sustain 10 minutes of school per day safely, 10 minutes in an entire day. He exhibited aggression for many hours of his day, and other challenging school confirmed the same at home and described him as getting really amped up from all emotions, positive and negative, meaning excitement or surprise would elicit aggression and dysregulation as frequently as disappointment or frustration. Family told us they tried to take him to the hospital during an episode of dysregulation, but because he calmed at the hospital, they were never admitted. They were given referrals to services and case managers, but those services never started because they were too challenging for the family to schedule. The primary parent had lost multiple jobs, leaving to attend to the child's behavior, and was picking up work in several creative ways to make ends meet. The fluctuation of the parent work schedule resulted in many canceled appointments and not being able to sustain a provider. In our TTM classroom at NEC, this child was flipping tables and in an aggressive dysregulation state multiple times a day. The school safety team often had to support the classroom team as his small size and extreme strength made holds very challenging and dangerous for him and staff. He was sometimes triggered by the school expectations. Other times there was no discernible external trigger. His family disclosed that he had witnessed traumatic events since early childhood, and then it just lived in his body. Our classroom therapist observed that during aggression, he was dissociating and his brain was not online at all. He couldn't speak or connect with anyone, and after he couldn't process or understand a timeline of events leading up to it. We focused on his nervous system, grounding strategies, and with lullaby music and other sensory tools that he responded positively to and seemed to keep him with us. His classroom team described that being with him was like being with a ticking time bomb. His nervous system seemed to be wired to blow, and the team had to pick up on the smallest cues curve, and they had to keep finding ways to ground him with body-based breaks, physical release. Eventually, he could share his past experiences with action figures and play therapy. With therapist narration of his play, his vocabulary for these experiences and feelings grew. His window for what he could tolerate emotionally while staying regulated stretched, and he could do work for longer and longer periods of time. One way his classroom staff would stretch this window was by engaging in very animated, loud, and emotionally expressive games of Spot It, like the Spot It deck of cards. Okay. The first time this happened, he had to hide in the corner of the classroom because he was sure that it was an unsafe environment because of the noise, the loudness, and the excitement. It did not take long for him to realize through staff support that he could be animated himself and manage those feelings, and he was quickly beginning to play with everyone. When he aged out of our TTM classrooms, seek adults for help, talk through challenges in his life, and he was seeing himself as a successful student. He was shocked by behaviors around him. He stayed with Wilder Individual Family Therapy Services. He stayed with Wilder's individual and family therapy services because coordinating with another provider was still a barrier for his family, as was trusting someone new with some of the family history. He did really well in his year outside of TTM classroom support, and his data started to be looked at for possible transition. He graduated up to middle school at NEC, and his NEC team saw early that he was able to maintain his success, and with the rotation of new classes in middle school. He then started his transition to Robbinsdale. Robbinsdale found him very ready and was able to support him back full time in a short amount of time. We are very proud of him and how far he came, and we hope you are too.
All right. If there are any questions, I'll turn it back over.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you for all that you have shared with that story. Kim.
So is there any relationship or intersection between this program and the new legislation prohibiting out-of-school suspensions for K through 3?
I would say there's not an explicit connection
Yeah.
necessarily, except I think that we know that we need to make sure that we're not suspending students.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of what we've done, not just with our TTM program, but I would say with other school-based mental health providers and with the ratio of supports that we have within our schools, we really work to look at how do we make sure that we're providing comparable? It's not going to be the same, right? The model, but how do we make sure that we're providing comparable things? And as we've learned more and looked at some of the success of what happens in TTM, how do we take some of that knowledge? We can't replicate it 100%, but for those students that are in programs that are in kindergarten through third grade in our other programs. How do we make sure that those students are getting some other services, or we're looking at some of the techniques that are used and transferring that in so that those students also get support? Because it's families have to choose to be part of, there are some things, that's one of the things we've learned over time. It has to be their choice. And they have not want that level of support. And we still have an obligation to make sure we're providing as much as we can to support them in the needs that we're seeing. And I think that aligns really well with our SEL goals in general, in terms of we've targeted intentionally those kindergarten through fifth grade students, because we recognize this based on our internal data. That's where our highest level of critical incidents and restrictive procedures is with that group.
I mean, so I was at the MSBA delegate assembly, and one of the resolutions that was just thinking about it in terms of, a member district who has a student that's continuously disrupted. So the path would be theoretically that the member district would refer to 287 in general, and then through 287, the student potentially could end up in this program.
Typically, what we've done it with referrals for that age group that are TTM eligible, if there's spaces available within the classrooms, which varies. Families are typically told by their member district, because all of the member districts, directors of special education know about the program. And so typically when they're referring in, there are people that ask for TTM specifically for that age group based on that information.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then based on that response, and the question I would have is, because you had up on there, they're 25, right?
That's 25 students.
Oh, that was re-entry, excuse me, I
Yes.
know I was stepped out for a second, but so.
We're serving 24. So there's 4 classrooms with 6 kids in
Right.
each.
And so that's that's our capacity today, but the need.
I would get excited about a conversation that isn't about expanding this service, but would be about supporting member districts
Yes.
in how we're getting the results we're getting.
Yes.
Because mental health care in the prison, right? If we're using a different model, and level 4 settings are so restrictive. And, oh, this kid can mainstream. This kid can be level 2. This, like, our level 3 is more on fire than this kid is. So that tells me, I think level 3 programs are struggling. And it might not be to have to offer, because it's taken us years to fine tune an approach that's working. And it comes with a ton of professional development and training and grabbing at all these evidence-based practices and having therapists be able to live it. And not every family is ready for family therapy, and not every family wants it. Not every family believes in mental health care. But I think we all know that there's a science behind regulation. So if we can't do all of it, maybe there's some of it we can do, and families should have an ability to opt out. Helping a student with regulation is part of what teachers already do. It's part of what educators already do. It's part of what social workers already do. And parents don't think that they've opted into a mental health service when they're having someone help their kid calm down. And if we can support that and fine tune those tools more specifically, that could be more of a solution. I'd love to get to a point where, like, our 4 TTM classrooms could be like model teaching sites that could be visited, people coming out, and I could take some of my more senior staff that are so good at talking about and sharing what they do, and we could pull out some consultation time. We've been taking interns the past couple of years, and our interns are flourishing with this knowledge and are way ahead of their graduating peers with some of this core skill development. But that also gives some of our classroom therapists time to leave the classroom and let an intern stretch their wings a little bit. So anyway, I know we are probably over our time.
No, you're okay.
Okay, there's lots of questions, so we also want to make sure.
Just to follow up, because I think we're speaking the same language. When I say capacity, I don't specifically mean taking from 4 to 8. If that were the strategy or that's what the need was, then I'd want to hear that. And then what do we need to do with that? But to your point that you just made, capacity is about how to extend it into the other areas. And so what is necessary, right? From what we're doing successfully at 287 back to the member districts, what are the capacity elements that need to be brought to bear and what supports are necessary for that within each of our own special services leads as to how to do that. What I heard when you just described what you did, I was just thinking of the grow your own again. It's like, it's just this different concept of grow your own. It's literally grow our own in our member districts through the capacity that has been generated by the TTM program that's here at 287 to go on from that standpoint. That's where you get the most, if you allow me to say it so inappropriately, bang for the buck is train the trainer as opposed to, you're right, just continue to go from there. So what you just said is awesome. And I would agree 1000% with that. And yes, more conversation should be done. And so how do we, in terms of with Marcy and the team and the leadership within our member district, have we made progress in that area? Thank you.
Well, what I can say to address you a little bit about that is we actually have had over, because it's been 10 years, 2 member districts, Brooklyn Center and Hopkins, have come out and done what Alma described. It's been several years now, but that was a curiosity that came out and did that. One of the things we've been trying to reignite, and I think when I initially proposed it, we unfortunately went into COVID and kind of pulled back. But when you talk about how do we work together and how do we open up those opportunities, I think that what Alma has summer would be a potential really good opportunity to look at how we can partner together. One of the things we've talked about is we've been able, as some of you know more than others, we've been able to leverage Project Aware grant funding, as well as our innovative grant funding and create opportunities that are internal. But we also talked about with our director of student support, similar to what some other intermediates are doing too with who are part of their system. How do we share those opportunities? So some of the things you're hearing about developmental repair or some of the things that we've learned in the program can be part of what's taught to members of your own districts and looking at what are some of those ways, not only just seeing the program, but what are some of the training pieces that we can make sure to offer. As we offer for our staff, we include your staff too. So we are working on how do we make sure that we can roll those opportunities out. So that's some of the things that we're actually discussing when we come back about how can we then share those opportunities. Typically they're shared with your through the Special Education Directors Advisory Group, CDAC. So
I think I saw a hand from Ruthie and then we'll do Dan after that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, I'm excited to hear about all the possibilities of this model of what could be done. I'm really thinking about the bill, at least the legislative one at the delegate assembly. How can we really address the issue of the number of K-3 students in dealing with suspensions? Because this model, I agree, should be maybe like a train the trainer or something to get out to more districts so we can address it. I really don't, I'm not in favor of suspensions during those grades, K-3. And maybe this is a possibility, of an option that can be looked at to deal with this population. So I'm really excited to hear about the model is successfully being implemented and can it be implemented in other school districts?
Well, thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot. I'm glad that you're kind of getting into the core of just how students regulate and whatnot. We've been fortunate, actually on our board. I know Jackie, you work with you. You talked about that a lot and kind of your work and all. So I do want to hear your perspective on this if you'd be so willing. But Alma, I did want to ask you, have you been a teacher in your career? I was very curious.
No, I have
No,
not.
okay.
I am married to one. Does that
Oh,
count? I've been at Wilder for 14 years. I started at Bush Residential Treatment Center, working with kids with the severity of how being abandoned can make you not be able to trust and how unsafe that can feel for kids. So I started there. And then after Wilder closed that program, I transferred to school-based mental health, where I look schools as a school-based mental health therapist before my supervisors tapped me on the shoulder and said, you work with the most kids were in and out of partial and day treatment and calling county crisis all the time because of the residential experience. They said you would be great in helping us school social worker in St. Paul schools as well. And respect that. Can't this that knows everything and think people aren't happy. So if we're going to be a help, futuristic goal that you do of these
Like, I mean, you've just educated the board so well on all your work in the last, several years of being in this role. So it's really been impressive. The one final question I did kind of have, and maybe you or Dr. Allen could, maybe team on this one, just kind of going, if there was one main lesson you'd say you've learned, what would that be?
One?
You go first.
Not to put you on the
One-
spot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. Collaboration is key. We are, just like you said, almost talked about the passion that comes from her about schools and the background. The level of collaboration to come together because we're two different institutions and organizations. And like she said, we have we spent a lot of time early on because I was a principal at North during this time of the shaping. And we spent a lot of time and we have really interesting conversations over the years. But when you realize that at the end of the day, what you're trying to co-create is that important, you work through it. But if you can't do that, it won't work. It doesn't matter if you take all the other components because you're going to have those moments, and we had them, right? Where we have to be like, I think this, well, I think this, and I think, and we literally would go back and forth. But I think and I was just talking about this earlier today with Deb at South, and I said, one of the best things we did when we started this work was we actually met over in Northeast Minneapolis at a coffee shop. So we weren't on our turf, we weren't on their turf, we were in a neutral space, and we got to know each other as human beings doing this really difficult, challenging work of creating this program. Even though we had all this data, now how do we make it a reality? And then how do we get to know each other when we're playing a little bit of tug of war? But how do we collaborate on a deep level so that we, at the end of the day, can work to make sure that our students can be successful?
I was actually going to say something similar. I was going to say that conflict is the norm. So for us to have a tension about my way or your, some people think that ruptures relationship. I grew up in a family that found it to be a healthy debate, and it's I can tolerate it just fine. And if at the end of the day, Tanya says like, no, this is where I draw the line and it's going to stay there, I can be okay with that. I can modify, I can create a workaround. So there's something about the partnership though, that if that's not healthy and if it's not easy to tell each other your truth or just tell each other your point of view, and if you don't feel safe enough to be able to just say it all and be heard, then it could be a fragile relationship, and this isn't gonna survive on a fragile foundation. I think it does come from leadership first. And I think the healthier we are with each other, the healthier our teams are with each other. I think it all just kind of trickles down to.
Yeah, well, very excellent. Well done. Thank you.
Or other people, Superintendent Dowd, go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge this amazing program doesn't come at a small penny. And yes, we get grants, but I have to acknowledge Wilder in the sense of the enormous amount of fundraising that you do in order to make this come alive, because we could not do it on our own in just the physical program itself, but the financial part. And so Wilder has always been a wonderful partner. They pay for the therapy side and then some professional development. And so I just want to acknowledge and thank Wilder for your, and Alma, you and your leadership and continued leadership.
Wilder is committed. We wouldn't have started this if we weren't. We don't. So when the Wilder board said that we would do this, it was going against dead Amherst H. Wilder's will that told us to stay within Ramsey County boundaries. The reason they could is because the will did state that you are called to do something if for the greater good. And because the issues impacting the students in your member districts and this district are researched, and these gaps in the children's mental health system are not isolated to one geographic region, but we're facing them throughout the nation, Wilder said we need to pilot this. If we can pilot this, it could have a greater good. So that was why all the fundraising was kicked in too, is because there is hope at Wilder as well, that if we can figure this out here in this partnership, it could be transferable somehow. The funding challenges are largely because we bill insurance for 2 sessions a week per kid, but the touch is way more intensive. So we choose not to bill more because a huge chunk of our kids are paying out of pocket for their mental health coverage due to poor insurance coverage. So, however, Tefra expanded their eligibility. A lot of our families are now eligible for Tefra. There's no payment cost to families for Tefra, but the process of getting Tefra is very similar to the process of getting Social Security benefits, where it's like application after application, denial, come back and apply again, and then you can get it. So even if we were to start a Tefra application on our first student the moment they come, the likelihood is they'd get it upon graduation. Still get it. It's important. But we have to be innovative because it would be cost prohibitive. And every other agency that's doing things like this with schools and a high intensity thing is billing and only taking medical assistance clients. We made a different choice.
Frazier. Similar. So they would go on, really want healthy kids, seated school, and quite frankly, attack the gaps. This is what we need to do more of. And in my district, I can have up to 20 kids. And because I have kids that have special needs, I get 2 assistants with 20 kids, but kindergarten has no assistants. And so we really need to advocate for more of this kind of collaboration. And I wish that learning the things from you would be enough. But I've had years where I've had 8 kids dysregulating all the time. And I can't do it all. I mean, I have almost a PhD in mental health. So if I can't do it, it's hard. So I know how hard your job is, and I appreciate it very much. And thank you for advocating for me.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you for all of this and for all of your time tonight. It is like amazing to think about how many years ago it was that this started. I think it was like one of my first years or first year on the board. Heidi and I were the only two board members who I think are still around from that era. But to just understand what has been learned and how things have evolved and adapted with a pandemic thrown in there just for good measure in the middle, is really remarkable. And like thinking about, as I think you said, Tanya, like the gap that programs like this currently fall within across the department, DHS, all of the different things. And I, like, the idealist in me wants to believe that the Department of Children, Youth and Families is where this is finally going to find a home, and champions who are going to understand all of the reasons why this needs to be invested in. The capacity needs to be built. We need to be thinking about this as a model and not just a pilot. So I'm gonna hold on to that idealistic hope for a little bit longer as that agency gets stood up. But just wanted to say thank you on behalf of all of us.
Just one more time. I'm also a licensed parent educator. So that family therapy thing. Huge. Family education in the K-12. K-12. That's
Comprehensive.
Bring our plan for this year back to this meeting. And connect our
Thank you.